Welcome back to the Pylon Camp Podcast, episode 5. We got a really exciting episode today. We're going to get into a new segment that I'm starting this week, with being that week 1 is finally upon us and football is finally back. I hope you guys are as excited as I am. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start with my final preseason takeaways. And I think that preseason being wrapped up for over a week now, we got to see a bunch of roster transactions. I think there's a lot to digest and a lot to talk through. I think a bunch of teams may have different identities come week 1 or solidify their identities come week 1. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to start off with the New York Giants. The New York Giants, I don't understand how they could possibly finish above 32nd in offensive line rankings, which is going to be a huge problem if they don't make the right changes. This is a make or break year for Daniel Jones. If you're watching on YouTube, you could see this picture where Daniel Jones is being sacked by 4 people from the Cowboys defensive line at the same time. And that just can't happen. In a make or break year for any franchise quarterback, you have to give them every opportunity to succeed. And if this kid is getting hit by an entire defensive line every other time he drops back, it's not going to be good for him. It's not going to be good for the New York Giants' chances at winning a division title this year. The Giants did go out and make a ton of acquisitions this offseason. Since roster cuts were made, they signed Billy Price from the Bengals, and they traded a 4th-round pick for I forget his name. I think it's Brian Brenson from the Ravens. And I think that they definitely recognized, if this goes unchecked, that this is not going to be good for them. Their chances of winning this division are going to go right out the door before it even starts. Andrew Thomas needs to take a huge step up. Will Hernandez looks like he did take a step up this offseason. Matt Parrott got benched for Nate Solder, which is very interesting. I don't think any Giants fan expected that to happen, being that Matt Parrott was a 3rd-round pick out of UConn in 2020. So this is going to look bad for the Giants if they can't fix this, because this whole season is riding on that offensive line. They have the weapons on offense now. Their defense is still good. It's still top 10. I just think that Giants fans, you should be worried about the offensive line, because if this goes unchecked, they may be screwed. But with that being said, let's talk about the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. I think the final week of preseason, we got to see why the Jaguars drafted Trevor Lawrence number 1 overall. And I think that Jaguars fans, you should be very excited, but I think that you need to keep your expectations realistic. This team is immersed in a rebuild, and I think from what I've seen so far, they're doing everything right. So they've completely rebuilt the offensive line, and I think I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, if you're watching on YouTube, comment below, but this is the youngest offensive line in the NFL, and it's going to need time to develop. The offensive line is, in my opinion, the only true unit in the NFL, and what I mean by that is they're so codependent on each other that they need time to gel and to build that chemistry and to get those pass protection reps. And Trevor Lawrence looked like he was running for his life. However, he looked fantastic. He was 11 for 12, 139 yards, and finally found the end zone. He finished two touchdowns with 0 picks. I think that this is a season where the Jaguars are going to take a massive leap that's not going to be seen or represented in their record. I think that you have a new regime with Urban Meyer, and you have a generational quarterback prospect in Trevor Lawrence, who even if he gets hurt, and for God forbid, but tears his ACL, he's still going to come back and be the savior to this franchise. And I think that we've seen it with Tom Brady in 2008 when he tore his ACL week 1. I think that for quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence and like Tom Brady, it gives them a different perspective of how to handle themselves throughout the remainder of their career. And I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence needs to get hurt. I'm just saying that this franchise will be in good hands so long as Trevor Lawrence is there, no matter what happens to him. And one of the things I love about Trevor Lawrence and why I think that he's one of his most ideal characteristics, we talked about it in previous episodes in the podcast, there are literally zero character concerns. This is a kid where he's already married, and say what you want, whether you believe in Christianity or not. If I'm Urban Meyer, I never have to worry about what Trevor Lawrence is doing when he leaves the facility or if it's a weekend. I know he's either at home spending time with his wife or he's at home watching tape if it's a weekday. Unlike Dwayne Haskins, who's supposed to come in to be the franchise guy for, at the time, the Washington Redskins, and then for the Washington football team, he was out at a strip club without a mask on. And, this is the thing of why I'm such a big believer in you have to worry about character concerns. Because Trevor Lawrence, on top of his talent, you do not have to worry about him off the field, which is a huge deal, and I think is often so overlooked when general managers and head coaches are looking at which player to draft. Because draft capital is so scarce and it's so valuable that you have to get it right. And I think that when you have a player where you just know you do not have to worry about them at all, it's such an added benefit to their talent. Because you know you don't have to worry about them not playing for you. You know you don't have to worry about them getting suspended. You know you don't have to worry about them getting in legal trouble. To me, this is why Trevor Lawrence is the perfect quarterback prospect. He has all the intangibles, he has all the talent, and you just do not have to worry about him ever. I can go to sleep knowing my most valuable player will be there every Sunday and will be at practice every day, unless he's hurt or something. But if I'm a Jaguars fan, and I do like the Jaguars a lot, I'm a huge, I don't want to say closeted Jaguars fan, but they are my second favorite team. And there's a whole backstory to that, but I'm really excited for this Jaguars team. I'm really excited for James Robinson. If you're a Jaguars fan, I think the clouds, the storm clouds are parting and the sun is shining through and your franchise is finally trajecting in the right direction since the AFC Championship with Blake Bortles. But let's go to the next scene. Kyle Pitts finally suiting up for Atlanta. This kid, when I watched his one reception, if you've ever watched the Avengers 1 movie, he looked like when the Hulk was running through the hangar bay in Avengers headquarters. He had one catch for 27 yards, and he just looks... I don't even know how to put it into words. This kid looks like he's head and shoulders taller than everybody and is just moving faster than everybody. And you have the added benefit of this kid not having a single drop in 2020 at Florida, and he's coming out as this generational tight end prospect. The more I think about Kyle Pitts, the more excited about him I get. I've been on Twitter starting to tweet out my predictions for Kyle Pitts, and one hot take that I don't think is actually that hot is Kyle Pitts will finish with the most receiving yards and the most receiving touchdowns of any rookie pass catcher. I don't think that's a crazy take, being at the situation with Atlanta. They're gonna be playing from behind all the time. I don't really think people are understanding how hard it's gonna be for coaches to game plan for. Kyle Pitts is a player that if you're a defensive coordinator, he's going to keep you up at night because he's so Kyle Pitts. I've said this in one of the podcast episodes. Every year there's a buzzword, and in 2019 and 2020 it was generational talent. 2021 it's unicorn. I think Kyle Pitts is the only player deserving of the title unicorn, being that he's the same size. I think he's an inch taller. He's the same weight as Calvin Johnson. And that's not to say he's going to be Calvin Johnson, but I'm also pretty positive his combine metrics were near identical to Calvin Johnson. So this kid, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you want a spicy hot take, it's going to sound crazy, but Kyle Pitts' ceiling could be Calvin Johnson. And I'm not saying that's what he's going to be. I'm just saying we witnessed with Calvin Johnson, teams literally had to double cover him off the line of scrimmage. I don't know how teams are going to plan for Kyle Pitts, and if this kid pans out to the hype, he could be that similar of a problem. At 6'6", 240, sure hands in all of his, I should have wrote them down, but his vertical metrics, his speed, he ran a 4.4, which is insane. With his height and weight, I just don't understand how teams are going to to stop this kid. We're going to talk about it later in the episode, but I think that, last season, if you're a sports bettor, Stephon Diggs was the player who outperformed all of his receiving over bets and receiving yard bets. I think Kyle Pitts is going to be that player for this season. I really do, because I was looking at the player props this morning for this episode, and we're going to talk about it later, but I really don't think the people in Las Vegas understand how hard it is going to be to, one, just scheme to stop this kid, but to physically stop him. He's a nightmare. He is. I don't know. I have a man crush on Kyle Pitts, but my super hot take for Kyle Pitts is Kyle Pitts could lead the Falcons over Calvin Ridley, over Russell Gage in receiving yards and touchdowns. Do I think that could happen? Not really. Could it happen? Yes. So that's my hot take, my super hot take for Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. I think Atlanta is going to be. If you haven't seen, the YouTube channel has been putting out shorter videos on just news and predictions, and I put out my AFC predictions and my NFC predictions, and I think I had Atlanta at 4-12 or 4-13, and this is a team that, to me, they're always going to be playing from behind, and Matt Ryan is the type of quarterback where you give him a 4-win team, he's going to go out and win 4 games, but if you give him a 12-win team, he's going to go out and win 12 games, and I don't think that I'm not saying this Falcons team is going to go out and win 12 games, but what I am saying is Matt Ryan is no slouch and is a very good stat patter, especially when it comes down to the end of games. And they have Arthur Smith there now. I just think that with how this Falcons played, how this Falcons team played in 2020, and you now add Kyle Pitts, who essentially is going to be playing Calvin Ridley's role from 2020. And he probably isn't even going to get CB2 coverage. Like, I don't know. The more I think about Kyle Pitts, the more higher his ceiling gets, if that makes sense. But to go to the next team, or the next takeaway, I think that, one super hot, not hot take, but kind of a dumb opinion that's starting to gain a lot more traction than it should, is Jamar Chase and his drops. Jamar Chase finished preseason 1 for 5. 5 targets, 1 catch. And I think everybody kind of needs to calm down about this. He's not a bust yet. And I think that is the running narrative, especially if you're a Cincinnati fan. You're kind of hitting the panic button of, did we draft the wrong guy? Because this is why I think it's going to take Jamar Chase a little bit longer to shake off the rust and kind of get into the swing of things, is because, one, he hasn't played football in nearly 2 years. So he's definitely a little bit rusty, for one. I don't even think you could even say he's rusty, but he hasn't played in 2 years. He didn't really show out in preseason because he was playing his first time. He skipped a year of college, and he's playing now in the NFL after not playing for a year, which is nerve-wracking enough that you're in the league. You have made it to the league, and you were drafted number 5 overall. But I think that he's probably someone who's on Twitter and on Instagram, and I think that a lot of the buzz, the immediate buzz he's seeing from within the city of Cincinnati, all the Cincinnati burner accounts, all the Cincinnati reporters, the beat reporters, they are all hitting the panic button on Jamar Chase already, which is insanity. I think he just needs a few weeks to catch his stride and to, calm his nerves. But I think that, there's so much added pressure being put on Jamar Chase, and that kind of stems from he got drafted into a pseudo-dysfunctional organization with a bad GM and a bad head coach. Because I think a lot of, not skeptics, but a lot of head personnel within the Bengals organization that was in that war room and was advocating for Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase now is seeing, Penei Sewell and Rashawn Slater is now seeing, they're kind of being those people that are like, oh, well, I told you so. And I think that that's going to piss a lot of people off, and I think that that is going to trickle down to Jamar Chase, because if the head coach wanted him and the GM wanted him, they're expecting him to perform, and they're expecting him to perform at a number 5 overall level. So I think that it's very stupid to say Jamar Chase is bust. I think the best thing that the Bengals could do for Jamar Chase is reassure him that you are good enough to be the number 5 overall player. You are who we think you are, and you are this talented. My prediction for Jamar Chase is I think he's going to catch a stride at the end of September when they play the Jaguars, and that's when he's going to break out. They have a pretty rough defensive schedule for September, and I think the trend for September for a lot of NFL teams is you're either a good September team or you're a bad September team. And I think that once he kind of gets a few, because I should have wrote it down, but they play a pretty tough schedule, and Jamar Chase, the Jaguars have a pretty bad secondary, and I think once he gets those reps under his belt for the first 3 weeks, then he's going to kind of get his confidence. He's going to kind of get his legs under him. I think that's when he breaks out against the Jaguars. I could be wrong and he breaks out earlier, but I am predicting that Jamar Chase will break out in 2021, and everybody will understand why they drafted him number 5 overall. The only thing that will inhibit his breakout is the Bengals' offensive line and Joe Burrow being confident enough in himself and his knee. Because I think it was Mark Schlater who said this. It was on forget which show I was watching, but he for those who don't know, and if I'm pronouncing his name right, he's a former Super Bowl champion and a former Pro Bowler for the Denver Broncos. He was saying that when you have a player who is not for every player that's like a phenom, but for every superstar that goes through an ACL injury, the most difficult part in the recovery process is understanding your new 100%. Because I think for anybody who has played sports, I was a former sports player. I played in college. And I was blessed where I luckily didn't have any injuries that sidelined me. But for teammates I had that got hurt, and I'm sure the case is similar for all of you people listening, and if you did get hurt, one of the things you had to understand and to learn, which is probably one of the hardest parts of an ACL injury, I've never had an ACL injury, thank God, but if you have had an ACL injury, one of the most difficult things for you to learn and to understand is you cannot perform at what you used to be able to perform at before the injury. Like, for instance, your new 100% could be your former pre-injury 85%, if that makes sense. So I think Joe Burrow, his nervousness and the storylines of Joe Burrow being scared are kind of being brushed under the rug of Jamar Chase's drops. But a lot of reports are still coming out that he's hesitant on that leg, and the Bengals' offensive line looks bad. So I think those are the two biggest keys for this Bengals team to click, and for Jamar Chase to have his breakout is Joe Burrow needs to understand, hey, this is my new 100%, and the Bengals' offensive line needs to give him more than like he can't be getting sacked 14 times by week 3. Like, that cannot happen again. And I think that if Jamar Chase does not pan out, I don't think that'll be the case. I will say, though, if he doesn't break out, let's just say until season 2 of his career, which would be 2022, people are going to get fired for passing on Rashawn Slater and Penei Sewell. Even though Penei Sewell looks bad, it was the more responsible pick for that front office. Rashawn Slater, who I had, if I was betting, would have bet that the Bengals went out and got Rashawn Slater because, and I've said this in multiple episodes now, whenever I talk about the Bengals, Rashawn Slater was the number 1 tackle prospect and the number 1 guard prospect. So you passed on it. I don't want to use the term generational talent because that's not what they are. But you passed on phenomenal talents in Rashawn Slater and Penei Sewell because you wanted to go get a playmaker. And sure, if your offensive line wasn't 32nd and Joe Burrow didn't almost just get his leg amputated, like, yeah, go get him. But because that's not the case and it's actually the opposite of your offensive line stinks and Joe Burrow's knee almost exploded, you definitely should not have gotten Jamar Chase, and you need Jamar Chase to perform so that you can, for Zach Taylor and the GM whose name I'm forgetting, Duke Tobin, you need him to perform at the level where everybody who advocated against you is wrong, because that's how they keep their job. If not, they will get fired. But that's what I want to say about Jamar Chase in the drops. Last takeaway is with the New England Patriots. I have dubbed this season the Patriots, the Empire Strikes Back. All of my buddies. So I have a good amount of Patriots friends, and I'm a fan of the Patriots team because I think that we live in a society where winning all the time is like discouraged, and everybody is a winner. Quote. I think that's very bad for developing competitors. But I think that is the reason why, because of the mentality that everybody's a winner. That's why people hate teams like Alabama or hate the Patriots, because they're tired of seeing someone succeed over and over and over and over and over again. And I think that's kind of dumb, because I think as someone who was a competitor and someone who likes to compete, that should be your motivation to get better. And when I was talking to my buddies who were Patriots fans, a lot of them were nervous last season. They were like, oh gosh, like, is it over? Are we done? Is the dynasty done? And I think as a Star Wars fan, this is the easiest analogy to make. The Patriots in 2020 were the Empire at the end of A New Hope. Like, the Death Star just blew up the first time. Now, I think that, especially after watching preseason, like, this was what I said in 2020, that the Death Star was being rebuilt. After the preseason, the Death Star is rebuilt. It is completely functional, it is operational, it's going to go blow up the Rebels. Mac Jones is everything Bill Belichick needs. He is everything they need to win over 10 games and to make the wild card. This narrative that Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are entities that, I think I said this in the first episode, one thing that really bothers me in sports media is this narrative that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick are dependent on one another to succeed, and that is not true. If you're the best quarterback of all time, you will succeed wherever you go. If you are the best coach of all time, you will have a backup plan and you will succeed every season. The Patriots had the most opt-outs of any team in 2020 and had Cam Newton, who nobody wanted, to a one-year contract, and I think they almost finished 500 or finished 500. This season, their defense is back. They have completely addressed stopping the run. They have two growing superstars. Well, I shouldn't say superstars, but they have Jacoby Myers, who looks really good, and Ramondre Stevenson, who looks fantastic. I'm a huge Ramondre Stevenson believer. I've talked about him basically all preseason long and in almost every podcast episode. And you have Damian Harris, who looks like a stud. They're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to be able to stop the run. They're going to be able to manage the clock. And Bill Belichick I have confidence in Bill Belichick to outcoach every coach in the NFL. 100%. Cliff Kingsbury cannot outcoach anybody. He will lose to Mike Vrabel week one if it's a close game. But Bill Belichick, I think his next step, and this is something to keep an eye on if you're a Patriots fan, watch the Saints. Because if the Saints look good enough in the passing game with Marquez Callaway, Michael Thomas, they will look to sell Michael Thomas more so than they are looking to sell him now. And I think one of the biggest candidates to buy Michael Thomas is the New England Patriots. Here's why. I have a philosophy that you will understand what your rookie quarterback is made of if you provide him these three things. The right head coach, Patriots have that, they have the best coach of all time. A great offensive line, they have that. The Patriots offensive line is ranked 3rd or 4th according to PFF. And now they need to get him a superstar wide receiver. And Mac Jones to me is efficient enough and smart enough in the pocket that he doesn't need a superstar to be able to throw for 250 yards per game and 2 touchdowns. But if you give him a deep threat, which he had in college in Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, on top of Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, this offense is going to become has the potential to be a top 10 offense. You have a great running game, you have a great offensive line, and now you add Michael Thomas, who 2 years ago was the best wide receiver in the entire NFL, and he's slant boy, quote unquote, because Drew Brees could throw 15 yards. Like Michael Thomas, if you look at his next gen stats, was the most efficient route runner on every single route he ran. Almost every single route he ran, which includes deep routes. If he goes to the New England Patriots, he's not going to be running slants all the time. And you give him Mac Jones, who has a very good arm, and I just think that this Patriots team is fully ready to shut everybody up. And if you think the other way, this is the thing. The Patriots probably will make the playoffs this season. A hot take is they win the division. If they get Michael Thomas, I think they might be able to win the division. And I know that sounds insane, but that's how much confidence I have in Bill Belichick. I just think that even though Sean McDermott is a great head coach, Bill Belichick is still the best head coach. And one advantage that the Patriots have that nobody is talking about, look at Bill Belichick's record against young quarterbacks, specifically under the age of 25. Every quarterback in the AFC East is under the age of 25. I think Josh Allen is 25. Could be 20. Yeah, I think he's 25. So that is an added aspect to this Patriots team that goes beyond who they have on the roster. Bill Belichick just knows how to coach against young players, which this Patriots team is I want to say they're going to win the division, but I can't say it yet because I need to see them play a regular season game, and I want to see which in-season acquisitions they make to address their team. Because one thing Bill Belichick does so much better than anybody else is he has this sixth sense of when to cut talent right before it declines. So, for instance, if you have a player who rushes for 1,000 yards and then is going to take a next step or take a step back in the following season, Bill Belichick knows when that's happening and he knows to cut them, or trade them, which is incredible. And I think that one move that could happen is they trade Stephon Gilmore for Michael Thomas, which would be one of the most brilliant moves he could make. Because Bill Belichick is good enough to scheme to cover his holes on defense because he's such a good defensive coach. He's a better defensive coach than he is an offensive coach, and he's elite at both. So my prediction for the Patriots week 1 is I think they completely dismantle Tua in Foxborough. I do. I think Tua is going to take a step forward in 2021, but I think the revenge tour for Bill Belichick is we're 3 days away from it, 4 days away from it. So I'm telling you, this season, the Patriots, the Empire Strikes Back. It's going to happen. Buckle up. If you hate the Patriots, I'm sorry, but it's going to be a bad season for you. If you're an AFC East fan, it's going to be a bad season for you. And if you're a Bills fan, the Patriots, if they're not already your least favorite team, if they dethrone you and win the division, you're going to hate them even more. And I think that, I don't want to say that they will win the division as they are now, but I think if they make the right moves, if they get Michael Thomas, I think they would win the division. Just because I just trust Bill Belichick more than I trust Sean McDermott. And I know that's a really hot take, but I really think it could happen. I think that this Patriots team can win this division. And I mean, the Bills are a favorite to go to the AFC Championship game, and nobody's talking about the Patriots even making the playoffs. That is how much confidence I have in Bill Belichick. Anyways, so those are my final preseason takeaways for 2021. I think that there's a lot to be excited about. I think this is going to be one of the most exciting NFL seasons in a very long time. So next we're going to talk about week 1 excitement and which games I'm most excited to watch. And I think that for your favorite team, or if you're just a football enthusiast, these are going to be the most fun games to watch. And I think that if you're a fantasy player, we're not going to get into the fantasy fantasy side of it, but I will release a video today about players to start or sit. And then probably Friday, I'm going to release a video on start, sit, cut players. So keep an eye out for that if you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. But these are my favorite games to watch for week 1, and this is going in order of the week. So obviously, coming in at number 1, we have Thursday night at 8:20, the Cowboys at the Buccaneers. And I think that this game first of all, it's the first game of the year. COVID is over. Fans are back. Like everybody, this is probably going to be the second most watched game to the Super Bowl. This game has so many storylines. It is going to be so exciting. I think that's something that's going to happen. I think one prediction I have for this game is it's going to be a way bigger blowout than people are thinking. I think that Tom Brady's going to have like over 2 touchdowns throwing, and I think that he might come close to 300 yards passing. I also think that there's going to be a huge spike in Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette excitement because this Cowboys team, I think, ranked 31st in run defense, and they didn't really address it in free agency. Well, I guess you could kind of argue they did because they signed Keanu Neal, who is a safety from the Falcons, but apparently Cowboys fans and reports are coming out that they're converting him to linebacker. So big question mark for the Cowboys at safety, which is why I'm a huge fan of this is going to be a huge game through the air. And I think that the Buccaneers are going to run all over them. The Cowboys, I am just excited to watch their offense. We're going to talk about sports bets. That's the new segment coming up. We're going to talk about my locks for the week. And I'm avoiding the Cowboys because I don't know what to expect. I think they're going to be flashy and it's going to be as advertised, but I don't know who's going to they're just so talented everywhere. But I'm super excited for this game. It's the first game of the season. There's so much to be excited for. This could be the Bucs' first game to make a statement with if they could blow out this Cowboys team with how good that Cowboys offense is. I think it's going to be a huge statement for how good their defense is. And if they could put up points, because this is the thing. A lot of people are kind of saying like, oh, well, the Cowboys lost a bunch of winnable games in 2020. But the thing with not the Cowboys. I mean, the Buccaneers lost a bunch of winnable games in 2020. But if you noticed, the Buccaneers didn't really start gelling until after like week 8, which is basically, it was halfway. So they didn't start gelling to the back half of the season. And I think that now that they're keeping everything the same, they're going to remain consistent. They are going to roll into this season and just dominate right off the bat. So I don't have a score prediction for this game. I think if I had to give one off the top of my head, I think kind of a hot take, but I think it'll be 35-17. Buccaneers beat the Cowboys. I think that with how good the Buccaneers are through the air and how bad the Cowboys are at stopping the run, they did make a bunch of acquisitions in the draft, which is good for their long-term goal. But I think with a division title set in their sights, they needed to be more aggressive in the free agency because you need proven players. You had Bud Dupree, who was on the market. You had all of these players who were available on the market, and they didn't go get any of them. They got Keanu Neal, which addressed their issue at safety, but they're converting him to a linebacker, which is their only defensive position or skill set, their only defensive unit where they're strong at. They are very set at linebacker. So I guess they're going with the mentality of make your strength stronger and your weaknesses weaker, if that is the saying. But I don't know what to make of the Cowboys. I think their offense is going to be good, but their defense is not. I think their rookies will make them better, but like rookies do bust. So you have to bet if the Cowboys want to win the division, their offense has to be above and beyond exceptional, and their defense, their rookies need to make huge impacts. Micah Parsons will make a huge impact. I think he's my favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. But yeah, they got to go out and prove that their defense is not 30th. They have to be average because their offense will be able to do the rest. if Dak stays healthy. Dak is someone I'm watching to get hurt again. I think that the shoulder injury is I've said this multiple times. I think the shoulder injury is way worse than they're letting on. So I'm very curious as to what is being said about it behind closed doors. Anyway, going to the next game, I have Sunday at 1 o'clock for the 1 o'clock slate. I have the Jets at the Panthers. This is a fun game to watch, in my opinion, because Sam Darnold is a player that I have a lot of hopes for this season. I'm hoping the best for him because he got the short end of the stick, and I think he's a better prospect than Zach Wilson. And I think that this is a game where he is going to show it. I think Sam Darnold's going to go out and prove that if you gave me the right weapons, if you gave me an average offensive line, I could go win games. And I think that this game is going to be an absolute blowout. So a few matchups to watch, in my opinion. If you watch the Pylon Camp Fantasy Cast, which is our fantasy podcast episodes, Corey Davis is my number one my number one bust, or 2021 player to fade. I called him a bust on Twitter for 2021. This is a game where I think if you own him, he's gonna play well this game because I think that the Panthers are probably gonna put J.C. Horn on him, who's just a rookie. So if Corey Davis is gonna ball out, it's gonna be this game. I would sell him after that because after that, the divisional matchups he has are gonna be so hard for him. Being that he was never an alpha wide receiver one, he's never put up over 1,000 yards in a season, he's never put up over 5 touchdowns in a season, and he has to play against Xavier Howard, Stephon Gilmore, and Tre'Davious White 6 times a year. So, with a rookie quarterback who may or may not be a victim of overhype by the media. So, one prediction I have for Corey Davis is he has under 700 receiving yards this season, even as they're won. I think the division is just too hard. And those 6 games where he's going to be putting up less than 50 yards, he would have to put up over like 100 yards per game, almost 100 yards per game in all of the non-conference games to be worth where he's being drafted, in my opinion. So I think that the Panthers win this game. I think it's going to be a very fun storyline. I'm very interested to see how Zach Wilson plays because this is going to be his first real test, in my opinion, where he plays a true first-string defensive unit. And this is the game where if he's going to ball out, it's going to be against this really young Panthers team. However, and the Panthers defense is young, and they have an offensive head coach. So that's going to be tough. I think one player to watch in this game is going to be Elijah Moore. If the Jets win, it will be because of Elijah Moore. Because I think this game will be this is my thing with the Jets, and I've said this multiple times. In my opinion, there are 4 categories for teams. There's elite, there is balanced, there is shootout, and there's trash. Balanced, elite being you have a great defense and a great offense. Balanced, you have a better defense than you have offense, but still a good offense. And then shootout, you have a terrible defense and you have a great offense. That's why I think the Cowboys are the best shootout team this year. And then you have trash, which is you don't have a good defense and you can't win shootouts. The Jets, to me, do not have the ammo to win shootouts, and I think the Panthers are in that shootout category. That's why I have the Panthers beating the Jets. Christian McCaffrey, which is his own problem. Then you have the Jets' biggest weakness is cornerback. They have Robbie Anderson, who's coming off a 1,000-yard season, DJ Moore, who is a 1,000-yard receiver, and you have rookie breakout star Terrace Marshall. So we're going to talk more about Terrace Marshall in the next section, but I just don't think that the Jets have the receivers or the running backs to compete with the Panthers. I think Corey Davis is going to have a decent game. I'm interested to see how Zach Wilson performs because I know the Panthers now support Sam Darnold fully, and they are going to be encouraging him by booing Zach Wilson even harder than any other player because they chose Zach Wilson over the Panthers' hopeful franchise quarterback. So that's an interesting storyline to watch. And I think that the running back situation, Michael Carter, Ty Johnson, I don't think they're good enough. And the Panthers' defensive front is solid. They have a bunch of blooming superstars in that defensive front. So I'm taking the Panthers in this game. I think it's going to be a great storyline to watch. And then I have Sunday, the next game in the Sunday at 1 o'clock slot, Chargers at Washington football team. I think this is going to be way more of a blowout than people think. And here's why. The best defensive player on the Washington football team got absolutely annihilated by Rashawn Slater in college. So if you're neutralizing Chase Young and you're giving Joe Burrow, who never had this last season, a clean pocket to throw, I don't think this game's going to be close. And the Chargers are getting a bunch of good players back from injury. On defense, Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to make mistakes. And I think Justin Herbert will make mistakes too, because Washington did address their secondary needs, but I don't think it's as good as people think. I think it's better, but I don't think it's that good yet. Their front is elite. It's the best front in football, no doubt. But the quarterback difference is massive, and the skill position difference is not that big. You have Keenan Allen and Terry McLaurin, who match up well. And then you have Mike Williams versus De'Ami Brown, which is, I'm taking Mike Williams over a rookie. And then you have Curtis Samuel, who's hurt. And you have, I'm drawing a blank. But I just think that quarterback difference is too massive. Chase Young is going to be neutralized by Rashawn Slater. I don't think this game's going to be close. And I'm excited to watch it because I'm excited to see what Justin Herbert could do with an average offensive line. Going to the next game, last game in the 1 o'clock spot, Titans versus Cardinals at Titans. I think that this is going to be the biggest test for the Cardinals defense, one, and Cliff Kingsbury, and we're going to see if the Titans defense improves at all. I think this is going to be a fun defensive matchup to watch, and I think that the Titans offense is going to destroy the Cardinals defense. However, if the Cardinals can win this game, I will be impressed, because it goes to show how talented their team is without Cliff Kingsbury being able to coach. Because if they win, any game they win will not be because of Cliff Kingsbury. You can't convince me that a coach who let his team go 0-6 down the stretch after a super hot start is a good coach, and he's out-coaching people. That is talent outplaying other teams. So I think this is going to be a fun game to watch. I'm excited to see how the Cardinals do against how these offenses match up, because I think the hype around the Titans offense is deserved, being that they have A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, and then you have the returning rushing leader, Derrick Henry. And then you have Ryan Tannehill, who's supposed to be a top 10 quarterback this season, according to Titans players. So I think it's going to be a fun offensive game to watch, also being that the Cardinals have DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore, who's supposed to be very good. He's a rookie. And then A.J. Green, who they added. They don't have really any running backs. I don't believe in Chase Edmonds, especially don't believe in James Conner, and Eno Benjamin. So this is going to be an interesting game to watch. I think if the Cardinals win, I'll give Cliff Kingsbury some props, because it's going to be a tough game to win. And if they get rolled, it's going to be all on Cliff Kingsbury. Can't coach a defense. You can't out-coach Mike Vrabel, and they don't even have a defense. Like, the Titans' defense is bad. That's why they didn't go anywhere in the playoffs, because their defense is bad. They can't get to a quarterback. And Kyler Murray is one of the toughest quarterbacks to sack in the NFL. So now that they added Bud Dupree, I mean, if he's getting to Kyler Murray, the Titans' stock to me is to win the division, as the AFC South is going to go way up. And then to go to the 425 section, only two games to watch here. I have the Packers at the Saints. Last year, this could have been the NFC Championship. And this year, I think it's going to be interesting to see how aggressive Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are going to be, being that this is their last season together. And I'm curious to see how the Saints defense matches up against the Packers, and I want to see how Jameis Winston does. I think that Jameis Winston is going to be good, but my prediction for the Saints is to finish 9-8, 8-9 in that range. But it's going to be because they heat up after September ends. I think they're going to need. They play a bunch of good defensive teams early on. They play the Giants, Washington, and the Packers. Those are 3 of their 4 early matchups. So I'm interested to see how Jameis matches up there. And one of the things you have to watch if you're a Saints fan is how does Marquez Callaway play as the wide receiver 1? Because if he plays well, like I said earlier, it makes Michael Thomas more expendable. And if you keep Michael Thomas, that's great, but I don't think it's going to happen because there's now beef internally. And one of the things I'm a true believer in, if a player comes to the general manager and says, I want to be traded, you say, okay, and you work out the deal and you don't let it leave the house. Because when it leaves the house, it gives the player leverage. Because now everybody knows, hey, this kid wants to leave. So that's my take for the Packers. I also am curious to see if the Packers could do anything against Alvin Kamara. Because if they can neutralize Alvin Kamara, who is going to be the focal point of the Saints' offense, then I kind of will recant my take that, okay, the Packers can't stop the run. However, Alvin Kamara is too good. So I think that the Packers still can't stop the run. They stopped Derrick Henry in a blizzard, and they brushed that weakness under the rug. And I really don't think that it's any better. I think they played in Lambeau in a blizzard, and I don't think anybody could play in Lambeau in a blizzard besides Calvin Johnson, but it's neither here nor there. Anyways, one of the games I'm most excited to watch, we talked about it a few minutes ago, Dolphins at Patriots. I think the Patriots win this game, and I think Mac Jones is going to show that he is the better Alabama quarterback than Tua, and Tua had a great season at Alabama. Tua and Mac Jones arguably are some of the best Alabama quarterbacks ever. They're not the best, but I'd say they're up there, definitely within the top 10. And I think that this is going to be the Dolphins have a great defense, and they need Tua to be the spark for the offense. They gave him all of the materials and resources to have an explosive offense, being Jalen Waddle, and then now you're taking pressure off Devontae Parker, and they went out and got Will Fuller, who I'm not a believer in. I think his talent is undeniable, but he has to stay on the field. And I think that the Patriots have too good of a game plan. I think they know what's coming, and they're going to stop it. And Brian Flores is a Bill Belichick disciple, and historically, Bill Belichick plays very well in 1 September against young quarterbacks and against his own coaches, his own personnel that becomes head coaches. So I think the chips are, and it's at Foxborough, so I think the chips are stacked heavily in the Patriots' corner for them to go out and win this game, and I think it'll be a huge statement win. Because I think before the preseason, when they had Cam Newton, everybody was kind of writing this game off as, oh, Miami's going to come in and win. Now I think, 1, it's a lot closer, and 2, I think it swung into the favor of the Patriots pretty heavily for the reasons I just listed. And in the last game, this is just a meme game that I am excited to watch because the spread on this game is like, I want to know what the person was drinking the day they posted the spread. Because Monday night at 8:15, we have the Ravens at the Raiders. And we're going to talk about the spread, but it's supposed to be a close game, and I have no idea how that's even logical. The Ravens, without being able to throw the ball, and Lamar Jackson has won 80% of his games. He has won 80% of his games, not being able to throw the ball. You have Tylan Wallace, who looks great, Mark Andrews, who they just signed to an extension, and they are preparing to be a more of an not an air raid offense, but they're preparing to be a more balanced offense. And you have Gus Edwards, who now is getting first, he is the RB1 there. And the thing with Gus Edwards that I think a lot of people don't know is Gus Edwards averages over 5 yards per carry for the past 3 seasons. So before J.K. Dobbins was there, he's been averaging over 5 yards per carry. And the Ravens have a phenomenal pass rush, which is going to obliterate this Raiders O-line. They got Odafe away from Penn State, and they are the best team at developing defensive line players. So this game, to me, it's not even going to be close. And I'm so excited because Mike Mayock just said at the end of last week, I don't know if you guys heard it, but if you didn't, this is what he said. He expects the Raiders to be a playoff team. I have the Ravens pegged for at the absolute maximum 5 wins. They're going to get annihilated. And the hot seat that Mike Mayock is already on is about to just light on fire. So, this is going to be a funny game to watch. Especially that it's on Monday night and everybody will be watching. And we get to see John Gruden and his stupid visor get absolutely annihilated. These are my next section we're going to talk about. And then we're going to wrap up is my locks for week 1. So, some of these spreads, I tried to pick, obviously what a lock means is, for those of you who are new to sports betting, a lock means it's going to happen. Absolutely locked in to happen. And some of these, especially the spreads, are pretty laughable because I don't think they really accounted for the off-season changes that most of these teams made. So we're going to talk about those. We're going to start with, if you want free money, and we're going to come back next week and do this segment probably every week and see where I was right and where I was wrong. So one thing I want to talk about first is Kyle Pitts. So if you were a sports bettor in 2020 and my buddy Brandon, shout out to Brandon, put me onto this. I'm not a huge bettor. I'll put like $20 in at the start of the season and try to make as much money as possible, then pull it out. He was right about Stephon Diggs almost every single week. I think every week he bet the over on receiving yards and the over for receptions. And they, for whatever reason, Las Vegas never adjusted to like Stephon Diggs and John. I think every week they just kept thinking it was a fluke. Kyle Pitts is over, or his reception player prop is 3.5. And his receiving yards is 40.5. Kyle Pitts had 1 catch for 27 yards. And he's being drafted number 4 overall. He's going to be a focal point in this offense. I would watch the prop for receptions and for yards. This week, they're playing Philadelphia. I don't think Philly has a good defense at all. Again, I still think that nobody knows. Like, Kyle Pitts is going to be a player where you will be up at night thinking, how do I stop this kid? Is my game plan good enough to stop him? And one of my hot takes is that Kyle Pitts' floor is tight end 4, and my super hot take is his floor is tight end 2. I just think this kid's going to blow it out of the water, and it's a hot take because it sounds like you're an idiot. So those are my hot takes for Kyle Pitts. Every week, I am going to be looking at the player props for Kyle Pitts receiving yards and Kyle Pitts receptions. This week, if you want free money, parlay the over on his receptions at 3.5 and the over on his yards at 40.5 to every single one of your bets. Because that is my favorite lock for this week. Because nobody is comprehending how hard it is to stop this kid. Going to the next game, I have Chargers versus Washington Football. So the spread is Los Angeles Chargers plus 0.5. Yeah, I mean, just take that bet. They're going to win by more than 0.5 points. Like, I'm scratching my head here. I think the Washington hype is kind of getting out of control. They're a great team, don't get me wrong, but they still have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's only a good quarterback when he's coming off the bench. So, take that bet. And then one player prop I would take for this game is Gibson over 13.5 receiving yards. I think Gibson is going to get a ton of receiving volume this season. I think my buddy Josiah, so shout out to Josiah, was saying that his goal for this season is 1,200 rushing yards and 800 receiving yards. So I think, to do a little bit of quick math, if he were to have 200 receiving yards on the season, that's averaging 12.5 yards per game. If he wants 800 and his expected volume is to be a Christian McCaffrey type workload, this is a lock. Like, he's going to have over. I also think that in the preseason, in Ryan Fitzpatrick's 22 reps, Antonio Gibson had 11 carries and 4 targets. So, I mean, take the over on his receiving yards. He's going to have more than 13.5 receiving yards. Buccaneers versus Cowboys. I'm taking Mike Evans as an anytime scorer. He's a 1,000-yard receiver for 7 consecutive seasons, and one of the biggest weaknesses in this Cowboys defense is their secondary. And Mike Evans matching up against a rookie cornerback, he's going to, you could bet the over on his receiving yards, but I think it's more likely that he scores than has an over on his receiving yards. I also have Tom Brady over 2.5 passing yards. I think Tom Brady against the Cowboys, this is true. Tom Brady against the Cowboys is 5-0, and on season openers, he's 14-4 in his career. So I'm taking Tom Brady over 2.5 passing yards as a lock. I think that he's going to, not passing yards, passing touchdowns. 2.5 passing touchdowns. I think he's going to throw for 3 touchdowns. I really do. And then going to the next game, just like we talked about, my most exciting games to watch, the spread for the Ravens versus Raiders is -4. -4. That is insanity. Like, I don't know who thought of this and what they were on when they thought of it. Because it looks like they were on a drug that's harder, that is a hallucinogen. -4 for, the Raiders are not good. And the Ravens are in the AFC Championship conversation every single year since Lamar Jackson has been their quarterback. Hammer this. This is free. This is free money right here. And then the next game, Jaguars versus Texans. I think that I'm taking the Jaguars -3. I am a little bit scared about the Jaguars secondary and their defense, but the Texans don't have a running back, and Brandon Cooks is good, but Tyrod Taylor, puncture lung, is their quarterback, and I don't know who their coach is. I don't think they're going to be anything this year. So I'm taking the Jaguars -3, and then Laviska Shenault or James Robinson to be an anytime scorer. I think that the Jaguars are going to be able to run all over this Texans team. Derrick Henry does it every single year. Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry, but James Robinson is a 1,400-yard undrafted free agency rookie who set the record for most rushing yards by a rookie, an undrafted free agent rookie. And I think he's going to go nuts. I also think that people kind of are on the assumption of that because they drafted Travis Etienne, Urban Meyer doesn't like James Robinson. I don't think that's the case. I think what he was trying to do is replicate the Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb style backfield, which being that you have James Robinson, who's great. He's a phenomenal player. He had similar stats to Nick Chubb last season. And then you add home run hitting caliber Travis Etienne to be your pass catcher. Reports coming out all over the place where he was lining up with the receivers. They wanted to be a pass catcher. I think that's what he was trying to do. And since Etienne is out this year with Liz Frank injury, which is a super bad foot sprain that requires surgery, and basically what it is the bridge in your foot collapses, so you need over 11, 12 weeks to recover from that. I think Robinson is going to see basically the same volume he saw last year. So you could bet the over on Robinson rushing yards. I think it was in the 80s though. That's why I didn't lock it, because I think 80 is a lot, even against the Texans. So maybe I would, if one prop that I would look at that I don't have as a lock is look at Robinson's total yards, because I think that he's going to have probably over 80 total yards. So keep an eye on that. And then Bengals versus the Vikings, I would take Jamar Chase under 4.5 receptions, and here's why. I think they're gonna give him 3 chances in this game to catch the ball, and if he doesn't, they're not gonna throw the ball for the rest of the game. I think that the Vikings secondary is very good. Plus, you have the added pressure of Danielle Hunter coming back, who is going to eat that Bengals offensive line alive. It depends on the concepts and the routes they're running Chase on. But if he's dropping the ball and Joe Burrow doesn't have the time to get him the ball, I also don't expect the Bengals offense to be on the field for much of this game. I think it's going to be a blowout. I would take the under on Jamar Chase, especially since it's at nearly 5 catches. So I'd take the under. And then Panthers versus Jets. This might be my second favorite prop. The Ravens and Kyle Pitts are my favorite. But for players, I think this comes in as my third favorite prop because it's a little bit more risky. So I'm taking the spread. Panthers to cover by -4. And I'm taking Terrace Marshall over 75 receiving yards, and here's why. Terrace Marshall has had over 50 yards on less than 3 catches every single game in the preseason. And why I'm saying less 50 yards at 3 receptions, because when he had 4 receptions, 5 receptions, he was in 90 yards, 100 yards, a touchdown. Like, this kid's going to be really good, and he's getting cornerback 3 coverage. So this, to me, is also, we're going to talk about it in the video later today, but so spoiler alert, Terrace Marshall is one of my favorite starts for this week in fantasy. So these are my locks for free money. If you want free money, take this bet. To someone out there who's a heavy gambler, parlay all of this and see how much money you could get and see if you win it. But that's going to do it for me. That's going to do it for episode 5 of the Pylon Camp podcast. Catch us on YouTube. We've been putting out a ton of content. We're trying to put out content every single day. I've been working my butt off on this, and I love doing it. So if you're watching if you like the podcast, come see our YouTube content. They're shorter videos, about 10 to 20 minutes. And yeah, that's going to do it for me. That's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. I will catch you on Tuesday for the Fantasy Cast. We will have a special guest Tuesday. She's very popular on Twitter, and she is growing into the NFL analyst world. I don't want to say it yet because she doesn't have anything confirmed, but she is basically there. But she's going to be on Tuesday. She might come on full time, to be determined there. But if you like what you heard, like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, dislike, comment, subscribe, and tell me what I could do better. But that's going to do it for this episode. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you on Tuesday. Peace!